What's up, guys? It's me again, Christian Rodriguez, and today I wanted to talk about comfort zones, right? And why comfort zones will fuck up your life. They'll ruin your life. Because the issue with comfort zones, right, is you want to achieve anything great in life, you want to get a better life, whatever it is you want to accomplish, right? It requires you to get out of your comfort zone. I know everyone knows this, so I'm just going to brush through it, so I'm not going to get too far into it. But yeah, it requires you to get out of your comfort zone. If you're in your comfort zone, it's it's going to guarantee that you're not going to achieve anything. I promise, it will guarantee it. The reason why I say this, right, is because people, I think logically, like, people will agree with me. Everyone watching this would 100% sit down with me and be like, yeah, no, you're right. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Duh, Christian. Pretty obvious, right? The only thing is, everyone knows it, but very few will do it. That's the thing, right? And I get it. It sucks. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable. But I got this idea, right? Because I was thinking of my time back in college, right? I know I made a video shitting on college, but basically, one of the few things I remember from college, it was from a what class was it? It was like a religion class that I took, or a philosophy class. Yeah, it was like one of those types of classes that I took, right? And I remember we talked about Plato. Plato was this great Greek philosopher, and he made this story called the allegory of the cave. And the allegory of the cave is about these men. I might be butchering it a little bit because it's been years since I didn't even read it. I just remember skimming through it. But I remember reading this book, and the book was about how this group of men, like, some of these men were in this cave, right? They were in this cave. They were shackled, right? And we were talking about what was the meaning behind the cave, right? And I came to the conclusion that the cave was something. It was a kind of like a comfort zone, right? It was something to keep you from going somewhere else, right? And the thing is, the guys were shackled. They were in this cave, and maybe they were laughing together. They were happy together. They were enjoying life together, right? But the thing is, they also didn't know any better. They didn't know what was outside the cave, and they didn't care to, because for them to get outside the cave, for them to get off the shackles, is it's very it's out of their comfort zone. It's kind of dangerous. It's like there's uncertainty behind it, right? There's some discomfort around it, right? And that's the thing. What it made me realize is maybe there's that one guy, right? There's the one guy from the I don't remember the damn book, so I'm gonna make my own version of it. But basically, there's this one guy that leaves the shackles, the cave, right? And he ends up going somewhere else. He ends up experiencing life. He ends up realizing that he could have done it. He just needed a little bit of bravery to do it, but he was able to do it. And then maybe he ends up going back to the cave, right, to catch up with his old friends, his old boys. So he goes to the cave to meet up with his boys, right? And just to tell them how amazing it was outside, right? And what happens? He starts realizing that the shackles and the cave is intolerable. He can't deal with it. He's like, this is not me anymore. I hate this cave. I don't want to be here, right? And then maybe he's noticing his friends are giving him some sort of shit for it. They're giving him flack for it, right? Maybe the other guys in the cave are telling him, "Oh, you think you're better than us, huh? Oh, you think, oh, you're Mr. Hollywood now?" Stuff like that, right? And the point of the cave is, right, is the cave represents some sort of comfort zone. And the comfort zone, and you need to be able to get out of that comfort zone, right? And when you get out of that comfort zone, you're going to experience things that you never would have experienced if you stayed in your comfort zone, right? And an easier way for me to describe this is when I started solo traveling, right? First time I ever left the country by myself. I've traveled before with friends, and I've studied abroad in school. But once I solo traveled, right, for like a martial arts retreat, I didn't know a person. I didn't know anyone leading up to the trip. I was fucking nervous. I was going to Vietnam. I have a US passport, so I needed a visa to go to Vietnam, right? So I needed a visa. There was uncertainty. I didn't know anyone. My family was telling me how insane it is. I shouldn't be going to a country where I don't speak the language, stuff like that, right? By myself. And I was just thinking, I was a little nervous, right? I was definitely really nervous, right? I was like scared. I ended up doing it and I ended up thriving, right? And I ended up realizing that I could freaking make friends on my own. I don't really need people to travel. If I want to go somewhere, I just decide to go. And also, I didn't really I didn't have trouble making friends. I didn't have trouble meeting people while I was there because I met other people who were also traveling solo. So it just became super easy from there. And plus I was going to retreat, so I was able to I became friends with the people I was training with, right? And we would hang out during like breaks and stuff like that, right? When we weren't training. And the point of the story is, right, I remember going back to my old social circle, right? And experiencing it it almost didn't feel the same. Like I felt more like disrespect. I felt more how would you say it? Disrespect. I felt more like almost like envy, right? Like I felt signs of envy from it, right? And I was growing. I was finally like doing something that was making me happy. And I realized that that I almost had to shrink myself to make my old friends feel comfortable, right? Because I almost had to like shrink myself so they didn't feel insecure, right? So they didn't feel like they were um that I grew too much, right? And when I realized that, I was like, I don't need to shrink myself. I grew. I made myself into a better person. I realized what's more out there, and that's when I decided I need to leave the circle. The circle's done, right? They're too our comfort zones aren't the same, and there's tension going on, right? And I think when I never traveled, right, and I thought those are my only friends that I could stick with, right? Those are my only friends. I feared it. I was like, I don't want to lose those friends. Those are my friends for life. We've known each other for years. Like that poor excuse that people use, right? But that's the thing. Once I experienced like being around better people, like people who actually genuinely like uplifted you, right? Because you could feel it. You know the difference when someone's genuinely uplifting you, when people are hyping you up, like when they're actually want you to win, versus when people like secretly want you to fail. Like you deep down know it, right? And the thing is, when you don't experience people like that, you have no fucking idea. You have no idea. So you're more likely to experience your old friends who secretly want you to lose everything, right? You're around them, they want to keep you down, they're levelers, or maybe they tell you, yeah, you're strong, you have retard strength. They tell you like backhanded compliments. Compliments that sound like they're compliments, but in reality there's a bit of a salt behind them. Stuff like that. You If you don't get out of your comfort zone, right? And like other aspects of life, right? For me, it was solo traveling. That's what did it for me, right? Solo traveling, because it made me realize the people from my old life, the people like who I grew up with, or people I was friends with, weren't good for me, right? It made me realize that, and then that's when I stopped caring about other people's opinions, right? And that's the thing. If I never did that, I might have would have tolerated it longer. I think I would have tolerated it far longer, right? And that's the thing. Once you start, once you experience what's better, when you get out of your comfort zone, you start getting around better things, better people, better environments, right? And then when you go back to the old environment, if you ever do, you're going to notice the big contrast behind it. And then you're going to realize I deserve better. I need better in my life. I worked hard for this. I was around great people and now I'm not, right? And then you're not going to tolerate the wrong people in your life. You're going to be more willing to go lone wolf. And I've talked about becoming lone wolf in the past, right? Because if you're not willing to go lone wolf, you're you're basically, because naturally as humans we're tribal creatures, right? We like being around people. But the issue is, if you're not used to being alone, right, and you fear losing your old friends, right, your friends maybe you went to college with or you went to high school with, what's going to happen is you're going to tolerate disrespect. You might even tolerate betrayal, right? You might deal with like shit that you normally wouldn't tolerate if you were around better people, right? And I think this is the part that most people like don't really understand, because I notice even people, even family members would tell me, "Oh, did you know him for a long time? Yeah, you should keep him around because you've known each other for." That's shit advice. That is the worst fucking advice you could ever get. Most people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I've already made a video on that, but most people are fucking oblivious. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So do not ever, ever listen to that advice. That advice is horseshit, right? If someone is, if you know someone, I don't care if you've known them for fucking since you guys were in kindergarten. I don't care if you guys knew each other since you guys were 3 years old and you guys are both shitting your diapers together. I don't care if you guys known each other for that long. If this person is holding you back, if they're being a fucking anchor to your life, if they're spreading negativity to your life, you fucking cut them off. You get rid of them. You lose their number. You just stop responding to their texts. That's all. You don't have to block them. You don't have to make a scene out of it. You just distance yourself and do your own thing. That's what you have to do. And I say this because actually that's a big reason why I started posting on this channel, right? Because I started posting on this channel because I experienced pain from past betrayals, you know, following advice that everyone tells you to follow, right? And the thing is, most of the advice that people tell you is bullshit. So I'm telling you from my experience, and I learned this from pain and also just solo traveling, right? It helped. Solo traveling helped. It made me better at noticing people. Same thing on my sales experience and probably other experiences that I'm not even thinking about. But seriously, like you need to get out of your comfort zone, right? Because when you get out of your comfort zone, you start noticing that what you were afraid of is not that bad. It's not the worst thing on the planet, right? Worst case scenario. Everyone's fear is right. Like for solo traveling, everyone's fear is getting lost in a country where they don't speak the language. Well, guess what? That happened to me. Literally, when I first landed in Tokyo solo, I took the wrong train out of Tokyo Haneda Airport, and I was completely lost. No one spoke English. And guess what? I wasn't freaking out. I was like, I'll figure it out. I'm tired. Maybe I'm a little jet lagged. I don't really want to be on. I don't really want. I want to get to my hotel room and eat. But I wasn't bitching about it. I wasn't like freaking out. Like I was. You know what I did? I took out my phone. I had Google Translate. Like I asked locals. I'm like, do you? I spoke a little bit like I knew some Japanese phrases. So I was like, "Ego wakarimasu ka?" Which means, "Do you speak English?" Like asking people, "Ego wakarimasu ka?" And they would say no, and then I would just show them Google Translate and ask them how to get to this location. And eventually, I found my way out of the situation. Right? Most people are absolutely terrified of that, so they use that as an excuse to do nothing. And I think that's what I really want to instill in you guys, that people just use excuses to do nothing, right? And stuff like that is an excuse to do nothing. Oh, business is risky. Well, getting fired from a job that you hate is risky as well, right? Especially when it's your only source of income. And to be honest, for most people, that's their only source of income, right? Being a lone wolf is something that everyone fears, right? It's uncomfortable for most people. If you're willing to go lone wolf, no one will have you by the balls, and then you could do whatever the fuck you want, right? And yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna keep creating more content. Take care and enjoy.